All right, so we've got Adam up next. And the title of his essay is The Audacity of Post-Racism. And here we have his very provocative quote. Right? For my part, I watched the speech in my living room on a laptop computer with tinny speakers, and I was with Obama until he let white people off the hook. Though I grasped the political necessity of the move, my expectations of this man were sufficiently high that it was disheartening to hear him fudge the difference between institutional racism and white bitterness.
All right. How's everybody doing tonight? You know, and I say that, I write that from a position of strong support then and now for Obama. But for me, what he did in that speech, among other things, among brilliant things, among rhetorical flourishes and deep historical analysis, was to put white bitterness and institutional racism on an equal footing, to characterize white anger at affirmative action and even at the thought that others might think them prejudiced, to characterize those things as similar to the frustrations felt by victims of entrenched structural racism. And I think that while it was a necessity and while scaring white people off at this juncture in the electoral process certainly would have been an unwise move, to me there was something disingenuous and even irresponsible in that formulation. And you know, it's interesting to look at the language Obama takes up in doing it, because to place the experiences of white and black Americans on an equal footing, what he must do is abandon the empirical and instead speak the language of the emotion. So there's this focus on how people feel, whether they feel privileged or not, whether they feel racist or not, rather than on the more objective realities of what they do, what they have, and what they say. And you know, this sort of soft focus abstraction of racial realities was a hallmark of the entire campaign, with its musings on whether Obama was too black, not black enough, you know, and naturally, or perhaps post-race, right? Naturally, one must be black to be post-race, right? There's no discussion of whether Hillary Clinton is too white or Mitt Romney is just white enough. You know, and of course the purpose of abstracting race in this way is to obscure racism, to elide the fact that a black person is never so lacking in blackness, culturally or personally or politically or by any standard, to find himself or herself exempt from discrimination. And you know, we see this playing out and echoing in different moments in the campaign. It's this kind of formulation, for instance, that sets the stage for the spectacular flame-out of Geraldine Ferraro, who, you know, ruins her obituary by mounting a spectacular example of racist action and is then forgiven because racist feeling is not found behind that action, right? She goes on to refuse to draw a distinction between structural racism and white resentment. And it becomes clear in the media's refusal to hold her accountable for her racism that it's actually become more acceptable to spout racism in the public arena than to accuse someone else of spouting racism in the public arena.
Okay, alrighty then. Adam has a wonderful essay, I have to say, too, called Dear Senator Clinton, and this was during the epic battle between Senator Clinton and Senator Obama, in which he kind of lays out the strategies for her to begin to exit, and why Obama was the candidate that one should put their money on. But it's an absolutely incredible essay. It can be found online. Where is that? What was that published?
Where was I believe that was for News One.
Yeah, News One. And so it's a fabulous essay.
Just to kind of amplify a couple of those points, you know, not only did 55% of white America vote for McCain in a situation where we had a plummeting economy, several unpopular wars, 8 years of Republican mismanagement and mayhem, they voted for him despite perhaps the worst run campaign in modern presidential history. You know, McCain's campaign was in disarray from day one until day I give up. So I think it's important that we remember that, and remember how hard fought this was, and how many of us, even on election night, still sat there on the edges of our seats, unable to really believe what was happening. Some of us, myself included, still don't fully believe it, right? This may be because I'm a Boston native and a Red Sox fan, so I haven't accepted that the Red Sox won the World Series in '04 yet either. These things remain impossible for so long that when they actually transpire, you have some lag time in actually accepting them. But if I understand your question right, I think you're not just talking about the electoral future, but also the broader future. What does Obama's success promise or open up for people of color in this country? And I think that, and for, just, people in general, as viewing opportunity and possibility in a new kind of way because of his presence. And I think that we really have to be rigorous in separating sort of inspiration from policy, And I think, we, across all kinds of cultural boundaries and across all kinds of demographics, we have a desire and a hope and an appetite in this country for these messianic figures, these leaders who shoulder a movement, change the world almost, by themselves. We tend to separate the leader from the grassroots and the figurehead from the message. And I think that we get into very tricky territory here, because clearly there is a way in which Obama's mere presence on the international stage opens up a world of imagination and possibility for people in this country. Just to see him and his family representing this country, for me, the most emotional moment on election night was watching his daughters cross the stage, saying, yeah, these are the girls who are going to be playing in the Rose Garden for the next 8 years. There's a certain power and potency in that. And, having, and it's impossible to overstate or overestimate the importance of having someone that an entire group of people who've been marginalized and ignored, and I don't just mean people of color or poor people, I mean vast swaths of this country who are not people who look like John McCain. There's enormous potential and importance just in the visuals and the message and what it means to have this man in the White House, but I worry that we focus too much on that when truly, substantially, the lasting legacy of a president is in policy, right? And ultimately, we have to judge Obama on what he is able to do to reverse 8 years of Bush, 8 years of Reagan, and a good amount of what Clinton did too, right? Let's not forget. So, when we talk about the future, we talk about whether this is a game changer, we really have to think about, well, is Obama going to dismantle the system of racist policing and judiciary in this country? What is he going to do about inequity in the educational system and, across the board, whether it's housing equality or any number of issues which intersect profoundly and problematically with race? So we can't focus simply on the leader. We have to focus on the policy, and really what the answer to your question is going to be determined by what he's able to get down on paper and get through Congress and put into law.